Leadership is a shift, not a position. It's not about the title printed under your name or the org chart you sit on top of. It's about the decision to step into responsibility in a way that changes how you think, how you act, and how you influence the people around you. That's the shift. Too many people wait to be given authority before they choose to lead. They wait to be promoted, wait for someone to validate them, wait until they are ready. But real leadership doesn't work like that. It starts the moment you decide to own outcomes, not just complete tasks. You shift when you stop asking what needs to get done and start asking who you need to become to move the team forward. It's not about controlling everything. It's about creating clarity, building trust, and delivering results consistently. There are people in every company who have no formal authority but are clearly leaders. Why? Because they own problems, drive conversations, and elevate standards. And there are managers with big titles who aren't leading anything because leadership has nothing to do with position and everything to do with mindset. If you think leadership is about giving orders, you've already lost. It's about service, vision, and the ability to pull people together toward a meaningful goal. The shift starts internally. You start thinking differently. You stop being the bottleneck. You start empowering people to solve, decide, and execute. You stop needing to be the smartest person in the room, and you start asking better questions. You become the person who sees around corners, not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to challenge assumptions, dig deeper, and drive clarity. You stop avoiding conflict and start leading through it with courage and care. That's leadership. That's the shift. It's not glamorous. It's not always recognized. And it's definitely not always comfortable. In fact, leadership done well is uncomfortable on purpose because growth lives in tension. High performers want leaders who challenge them, not coddle them. They want someone who sees their potential, not just their current capacity. And that takes a leader willing to be unpopular sometimes, someone who will tell the truth, hold the standard, and still care deeply about the person on the other end. Making the shift also means thinking longer term. Managers think about tasks and deadlines. Leaders think about capability, trajectory, and scalability. You're no longer solving for, did this get done today? You're solving for, is the team growing? Are we building something sustainable? Can this run without me? If you're the smartest, most productive, most involved person on the team, you're not leading, you're hoarding. Leadership means building others up, not being the hero every day. When you really make the shift, everything changes. You start managing energy, not just time. You listen more, you coach more, you challenge more. You build a culture where people know exactly what's expected of them, how they're performing, and what great looks like. You bring calm to chaos, you bring structure to strategy. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop blaming and start owning. Leadership isn't reactive, it's intentional, and let's be honest, making this shift is hard. Because it means letting go of old habits. It means redefining what success looks like, not just for you, but for your team. You're no longer measured by how much you can do. You're measured by what you can build, who you can develop, and how effectively your team can operate without your constant oversight. That's a radical change in identity for many people, but it's necessary if you want to grow beyond being an individual contributor with a fancy title. So if you want to lead, stop waiting, start shifting, start showing up differently, start being the example of what excellence looks like, start driving clarity instead of confusion. Start being the person your team can count on to navigate hard moments, push for progress, and celebrate wins with authenticity. Leadership is not a job, it's a responsibility, a privilege, and it requires daily commitment. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. You don't need a promotion, you need intention. You don't need more authority, you need more courage, because leadership is a shift, one that starts with you, long before anyone else sees it. Mindset drives behavior. It's the root system beneath every decision, every conversation, every leadership habit. You can't fake mindset, you can't bypass it. If you try to lead without addressing how you think, you'll burn out, break trust, or hit a ceiling you can't see. Your mindset is the internal engine that determines how you show up, how you handle pressure, how you react to failure, and how you lead others when things get hard. It's either working for you or against you. People often think behavior comes first. They focus on what leaders do, make decisions, run meetings, delegate, deliver results, but behavior is just the output. Mindset is the code behind it. If your mindset is reactive, fearful, or fixed, you'll lead with control, blame, and avoidance, even if you don't mean to. But when your mindset is growth-oriented, resilient, and purpose-driven, your behavior reflects confidence, clarity, and forward momentum. You don't lead from emotion, you lead from intention. The truth is, your team can feel your mindset. It leaks out in your tone, your timing, your body language, your willingness to listen, and your ability to receive feedback. You might say the right words, but if your mindset is defensive, people will feel it. If your mindset is scarce, they'll sense it. If your mindset is afraid of being wrong, you'll shut down dissent and call it decisiveness. That's why high-performing leaders invest deeply in mindset, not because it's trendy, but because it's foundational to everything else. You can't scale behavior if you don't upgrade the mindset behind it. You can train someone to run a meeting, but unless their mindset values curiosity, discipline, and outcomes, they'll just go through the motions. You can coach someone on having a tough conversation, but unless their mindset embraces accountability and honesty, they'll avoid conflict or sugarcoat the truth. And you can't expect yourself to lead effectively if your mindset is still stuck in self, doubt, ego, or perfectionism. Mindset shows up in small moments. It's in how you start your day. It's in how you interpret feedback. It's in whether you ask for help or try to solve everything alone. A strong mindset doesn't mean you're positive all the time. It means you are aware, you notice when you're triggered, you know the difference between reacting and responding, you pause, reset, and move forward with clarity. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being intentional with your emotions. The best leaders build their mindset like athletes train for peak performance. They journal, they reflect, they challenge their own assumptions, they ask, why did I react that way? Or what belief is driving this response? They see their mindset as a muscle, not a fixed trait. They don't just say, that's how I am. They ask, how do I need to think to lead better? That one question can change everything, and mindset is contagious. If your mindset is stuck, your team will get stuck too. If your mindset is focused on growth, progress, and solutions, your team will start thinking that way too. Your mindset creates the atmosphere people work in. It sets the tone. It either expands what's possible or quietly limits it. That's why leaders who ignore their mindset often find themselves surrounded by chaos, misalignment, and disengagement, and they can't figure out why. Changing your mindset doesn't happen by accident. It takes deliberate work. You have to build new thought patterns. You have to unlearn habits that once kept you safe but are now holding you back. Maybe you learned to avoid conflict or that failure equals weakness. Maybe you were taught that asking for help means you're not capable. Those beliefs will quietly sabotage your leadership until you shift them, and shifting them isn't easy, but it's necessary. You also need to protect your mindset. Leadership is full of pressure, distractions, and noise. If you're not careful, your mindset will slowly slide into fear or frustration. That's why you need routines that ground you: reading, mentorship, reflection, even sleep and exercise. These aren't luxuries, they're tools, because when your mindset is strong, you can handle hard conversations, pivot fast, and keep your team focused even in uncertainty. But when it's weak, even the smallest challenge feels overwhelming. Ultimately, every leader hits a point where skill alone isn't enough. You can have the strategy, you can have the tools, but if your mindset isn't aligned with growth, ownership, and possibility, you'll keep stalling out. You'll hold yourself back, you'll hold your team back, and nothing changes until you do. So ask yourself, what's the mindset behind your leadership right now? Is it helping you grow, or is it keeping you small? Are you leading from confidence or insecurity? Are you responding to challenges or reacting to pressure? Because leadership is not just what you do, it's how you think. And once you shift your mindset, your behavior, your results, and your impact will follow. Every single time metrics create focus in any hyper-forming team, clarity comes not from vague intentions or motivational language. It comes from measurable, visible, trackable outcomes. Metrics turn ambition into execution. They take strategy out of theory and bring it into day-to-day behavior. Without metrics, teams drift. They default to busyness over effectiveness, confusion over clarity, and activity over results. Metrics are not just numbers, they are the language of performance. Leaders who avoid metrics often say things like, "I trust my team," or "we're moving in the right direction," or "we're just focused on doing good work." But trust and direction are not substitutes for results. The absence of metrics doesn't build trust, it breeds inconsistency, because if your team doesn't know what success looks like, they're guessing, and guesswork isn't scalable. Metrics create focus because they force decisions. When you have real-time data, you stop operating from opinion and start operating from truth. You can't hide behind "we're doing our best" when the numbers show you're off track. That kind of visibility doesn't feel comfortable, but it creates momentum. When people know where they stand, they know how to move forward. When they don't, they either freeze or overwork to compensate for the lack of clarity. One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is assuming people are motivated by goals that aren't clearly defined. You can set big visions, but if your team doesn't have a scoreboard, they're just running in circles. A team without metrics is a team without direction. But when you define the right metrics, everything sharpens. People move faster, priorities get clear, progress becomes visible. Metrics also eliminate excuses. They shift conversations from blame to ownership. If the number is off, we're not arguing about whether there's a problem, we're solving it. That accountability is what drives improvement. It turns "I think" into "I know." It changes performance reviews from emotional debates to data-informed discussions. It empowers your team to take ownership of their performance instead of relying on subjective feedback. And here's the key: metrics must be tied to behavior. It's not just about outcomes, it's about understanding what drives them. For example, if you're measuring revenue, you should also be tracking the inputs that drive revenue: calls made, demos completed, deals advanced. If you only focus on the end result, you miss the opportunity to coach in real time. Metrics should tell a story. They should reveal where effort is being applied, where strategy is working, and where bottlenecks exist. That's how leaders use metrics to coach, not just to judge. They don't use numbers as a weapon. They use them as a flashlight. When a team misses a goal, it's not about pointing fingers. It's about asking, what pattern are we seeing here? What are we not doing? What's getting in the way? The numbers don't create shame. They create visibility. They show you where to lead. Metrics also build alignment across functions. When every department knows what they're measured on and how that connects to company goals, collaboration increases. Sales stops blaming marketing. Operations stops blaming product. Everyone sees how their piece fits into the larger system. That alignment doesn't happen through motivational speeches. It happens through metrics that are shared, tracked, and reviewed consistently. And consistency is key. You can't track metrics once a quarter and expect accountability to stick. Forming teams live in their metrics: weekly scorecards, daily stand-ups, visible dashboards. Not to micromanage, but to focus, because in a fast, moving company, the ability to adapt quickly comes from knowing what's working and what's not right now, not 3 months from now. Metrics also give people a sense of progress. Wins become tangible, improvement becomes visible. When people can see their numbers improving, they build confidence. When they see themselves hitting goals, they develop pride. That emotional connection to progress is a massive driver of motivation. People want to know they're winning. Metrics let them see it, but the wrong metrics can do more harm than good. That's why leaders must be intentional. Are your metrics measuring vanity or value? Are they tracking effort or outcomes? Are they simple enough to understand and specific enough to drive decisions? The best metrics are not the most complicated. They are the most actionable. If your team can't explain what they're being measured on or how to improve it, your metrics aren't working. Ultimately, metrics create focus by eliminating noise, they remove ambiguity, they clarify priorities, they provide the feedback loop that every person on your team needs in order to improve. Without them, you're relying on hope. With them, you're building a system that can scale. So if you want a focused, aligned, high-performance team, don't just talk about goals, define the metrics, track them relentlessly, coach to them consistently, and watch how fast your team starts to move, because when metrics are clear, focus becomes automatic. Momentum is built, not found. It doesn't show up by luck, inspiration, or a perfect set of circumstances. It's not something you stumble into when everything finally clicks. Momentum is the outcome of consistent, intentional action, especially when it's hard, especially when no one's watching. Leaders who wait for momentum rarely find it. Leaders who build momentum are the ones who understand that progress is not passive, it's something you create brick by brick, step by step, day after day. Most people think momentum comes after motivation. They believe they need to feel ready or inspired before they can act, but that's not how it works. Momentum creates motivation, not the other way around. When you take action, even a small step, you generate movement. That movement builds energy, that energy builds confidence, and that confidence reinforces the belief that progress is possible. Suddenly, you're no longer stuck. You're moving, not because the conditions were right, but because you decided to move anyway. That's how high-performing leaders operate. They don't wait for clarity. They create clarity through motion. They don't wait for the team to get fired up. They build systems and rhythms that produce results that fuel the team's energy. They understand that momentum isn't an accident, it's engineered, and building momentum starts with consistency, not intensity. Anyone can get hyped up for a day or a week. But momentum comes from doing the right things over and over again, especially when they feel boring, especially when they feel repetitive. Great leaders create structure around those actions, weekly scorecards, daily priorities, scheduled check-ins, not because they're obsessed with control, but because they know repetition drives momentum. You can't build momentum on chaos. You can't build it on wishful thinking. It's built on systems. It's built on discipline. It's built on clarity. When your team knows exactly what to do, when to do it, and why it matters, they move faster, they make fewer mistakes, they start to win. And those wins compound. One clear decision leads to one great result, which fuels the next decision and the next. That's momentum, but it starts with leadership. It also starts with standards. You don't build momentum by lowering the bar. You build it by holding the line, even when it's hard, even when your team is tired. The minute you let things slide, you introduce drag. Momentum hates drag. It hates excuses. It hates fuzzy expectations. Leaders who build momentum are relentless about protecting it. They eliminate distractions. They cut unnecessary meetings. They clarify priorities. They make it easier for their teams to win by removing what doesn't matter. Building momentum also means leaning into hard conversations. When something is off, whether it's performance, culture, or communication, leaders who value momentum address it immediately. They don't wait for it to work itself out. Because they know that unresolved tension kills speed, it creates hesitation, and hesitation is the enemy of momentum. The faster you resolve issues, the faster your team can move forward. Momentum is also emotional. People want to feel progress. They want to feel like their work matters and their effort is paying off. Leaders who understand this build momentum by celebrating small wins, not in a fluffy, performative way, but in a grounded, intentional way. They make progress visible. They connect daily actions to bigger outcomes. They show their team how far they've come and how close they are to the next breakthrough. But don't confuse momentum with chaos. More activity doesn't mean more progress. Leaders who chase every opportunity, change direction constantly, or overcommit their teams are not building momentum. They are creating burnout. Momentum requires focus. It requires saying no to good ideas so you can say yes to the right ones. It requires prioritizing simplicity over complexity, because the more focused your effort, the faster you move. The truth is, momentum has to be protected. It can be fragile. One poorly managed change, one overlooked detail, one leader who stops showing up with consistency, and suddenly everything slows down. That's why great leaders don't just build momentum, they maintain it. They treat it like a resource. They know how long it takes to generate and how quickly it can disappear. So they stay vigilant, they stay committed, and when setbacks happen, and they will, they don't panic. They don't start over, they recalibrate, they look at the data, they adjust, and they get back in motion, because they know that momentum isn't about perfection. It's about staying in motion longer than anyone else is willing to. You don't find momentum, you build it through structure, through standards, through clarity, through consistent action, through resilience in the face of obstacles. It's not glamorous, it's not always exciting. But it's what separates teams that talk about growth from teams that achieve it. The question isn't whether momentum exists. The question is, are you building it or waiting for it? Sustainable leadership isn't just about short-term wins or quick growth spikes. It's about building something that lasts, something that performs consistently, scales intelligently, and thrives without constant micromanagement. And at the core of that kind of leadership is a simple but powerful equation. Sustainable leadership equals aligned culture plus clear metrics plus empowered teams. If even one of these elements is missing, you might create momentary success, but it won't last. It'll break under pressure. Sustainability in leadership requires all three to be strong, aligned, and intentionally developed. Culture is where it starts. If your team doesn't understand who you are, what you believe, and how you operate, then everything else breaks down. Culture isn't just values printed on a wall. It's how people behave when no one's watching. It's the tone of the team, the decisions that get made, and the unspoken rules everyone follows. You can't scale a team without culture, because culture is what shapes decision making at every level. It's what keeps people aligned when they're moving fast. It's what holds the standard when the leader isn't in the room. But culture on its own isn't enough. You can have a strong sense of belonging, purpose, and connection. But if you don't have metrics, you have no clarity. You can't grow what you can't measure, and you can't lead what you can't track. Clear metrics provide the structure culture needs to turn values into action. They tell people what matters. They define success. They eliminate ambiguity. Metrics make performance visible, and when performance is visible, coaching becomes possible. The right metrics bring alignment across the board. They connect daily actions to long-term goals. They help people prioritize, focus, and make decisions without always needing a meeting or approval. But metrics don't work in isolation. They have to be paired with context. People need to understand why something is being measured, not just what is being measured. When metrics are used correctly, they don't feel like surveillance, they feel like clarity. They empower people to own their outcomes, and that's the third piece: empowered teams. Culture gives people the why, metrics give them the what, and empowerment gives them the how. Empowered teams don't wait for permission. They make decisions, they solve problems, they move fast because they know the direction, and they trust themselves and their leaders to adjust course when necessary. Empowerment doesn't mean chaos, it means building trust and responsibility into the system. Sustainable leadership is the art of designing systems where great people can thrive. You don't need to be involved in every detail. You need to set the vision, define the metrics, and create an environment where your team can execute at a high level without burning out. You build autonomy through structure, not freedom from it. The more structure you provide, when it's aligned with culture and reinforced by metrics, the more confident and capable your team becomes. What breaks sustainability is inconsistency. When culture is unclear, metrics are missing, or empowerment turns into abandonment, things start to fall apart. People don't know where they stand, they either disengage or overextend. High performers get frustrated, low performers go unnoticed, and leadership starts scrambling to keep everything under control. That's not leadership, that's firefighting, and you can't sustain that. Sustainable leadership means you're building something that works without constant intervention. You're creating a system that produces results through people, not around them. And that system is fueled by alignment. When culture, metrics, and empowerment are aligned, your team doesn't just work hard. They work smart, they execute with clarity, they support each other, they move fast without leaving a mess behind. You also create a better experience for your people. Sustainable leadership isn't just about results. It's about retention, development, and growth. People want to work in environments where they understand the expectations, feel ownership over their work, and know they're part of something meaningful. They don't want chaos. They want structure with flexibility. Clarity with autonomy, support with challenge. That balance is only possible when leadership is sustainable, and the leader sets the tone. If you're reactive, the team will be scattered. If you're focused, the team will be clear. If you model accountability, empowerment, and alignment, your team will reflect that, but it has to be modeled consistently. Sustainability isn't built in peaks, it's built in rhythms, daily huddles, weekly metrics reviews, monthly check-ins, quarterly recalibrations. These aren't boxes to check, they're systems to keep momentum alive. Ultimately, sustainable leadership is about thinking long term, not just asking, did we hit the number this month? But also, can we do this again next month without burnout? Can we grow this team without losing our culture? Can we scale this system without the quality dropping? Those are the questions sustainable leaders ask. Because true leadership doesn't just deliver results, it builds something that keeps delivering long after the meeting ends, and that only happens when culture is strong, metrics are clear, and teams are empowered to lead from every level.